If you have a Maytronics failed cable, how can you join it? If you want to cut off a faulty swivel, how can we make a waterproof join? In this example, we will be joining a M series cable. We plan the join to sit inside here. The joins I make can also be visible because they look neat. We work out that the join will be 30 centimeters from the robot end. So measure 30 centimeters from the robot connection. That's there. We want the join to be inside the robot body. We cut off the faulty swivel. The heat shrink tubing needs to be about 20 millimeters diameter. Remember to keep the cable grommet on. Slide on your heat shrink and start joining. The robot end will now join the long cable end. Once joined, the heat shrink can be placed over the joint. This demonstrates a 2-wire cable, but a 3-wire one is joined the same way. Remove the outer sheath, then the inner sheath. Do the same to the other end. With freshly cut cables, there is no internal corrosion. If corrosion has affected the wire, it will be very difficult to solder. Begin by tinning the stripped ends. Once tinned, they can be joined. A vise is used to hold one end still. Join the wires keeping the colours matched. Keep the wires as straight as you can. Once soldered, we use a waterproof epoxy resin. This is used to insulate the joins. The insulation needs to be waterproof. Heat shrink on the solder joins will not be waterproof. Some cables have reinforcing fibers inside them. This shows a 3-wire join with the black reinforcing fibers inside a cable. We do the solder joints and resin seal the whole lot. The resin seals the joints and holds the fibers. Once the resin sets around the joints, we can tie string. String is wrapped to hold the fibers securely. More resin is then applied around the string. This is a join using epoxy and a custom housing. The custom housing reinforces the join. The housing needs to fit inside my 20mm heat shrink. 2 halves are formed using this poly garden irrigation pipe. The housing is acrylic resin. I made 2 halves and they join together. More acrylic is mixed and it will bond to the custom halves. Powder and liquid monomer are mixed. The acrylic looks like dough. It is formed around the reinforced cable. I used the poly pipe to form the halves to make a nice shape. If the dough is done freehand, it is lumpy. We have about a 5-minute working time. Once set, I use some RTV silicone to seal the ends. Water cannot affect the solder joints as the epoxy has set over them. The alfoil was to prevent cable burn. My 20mm heat shrink fits over my custom joiner housing. Slip the heat shrink over the housing. This join will sit inside the robot body. The heat shrink will protrude into the cable grommet. This heat shrink has a built-in glue. Shrinking it over the housing gives it an original look. The join can be visible and still looks neat. We know now to use a heat gun around the edges. This prevents cable burn without the alfoil. Thanks for watching.